Settle in. Let the day fall away, and imagine yourself stepping back, far back, into a world of sand, stone, and slow, timeless rhythms. Tonight, we'll drift into ancient Egypt, not the golden image of sunlit temples and towering pyramids, but the quieter, harsher world that unfolded when the sun slipped beneath the horizon. The desert at night was a place of challenge and survival. Heat gave way to chill. The safety of light gave way to darkness, and the human body, weary from labor, struggled to find rest in a land that offered little comfort. Across the span of 2 hours, we will journey together through 4 different worlds of the Egyptian night. First, you'll walk in the sandals of an ordinary laborer, feeling the struggles of daily survival once the desert stars emerged. Then, you will follow the story of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king whose life and reign were bound up with restless nights beneath the same desert sky. After that, we will pause to gaze upward into the mysteries of the heavens themselves, exploring the sacred rituals, star clocks, and unanswered questions that defined Egyptian night watching. And finally, we'll end in the lamplit halls of the elite, where nobles reclined on cushions and feasted long after dusk, their experience a sharp contrast to the hardships of the poor. Allow the past to surround you, not as a tale of excitement, but as a calm unfolding of details. The desert night is waiting. Let us begin with a life of the ordinary, your life. If you were one of the countless Egyptians who toiled, endured, and sought sleep beneath the desert stars, the sun has gone, and with it, the burning weight of the day. For hours, you have worked under its fierce, gaze-cutting grain, hauling stones, plastering walls, or carrying loads of earth. Your body is drained, and as evening spreads, you retreat to a simple home of mud brick. At first, the air still clings to the warmth of the afternoon. The mud walls hold the day's heat, and stepping inside feels close, thick, and stifling. You sit on a low stool, perhaps on a woven mat, waiting for the coolness of the evening to seep in. But in Egypt, comfort is fleeting. The desert does not fade gently into night. Soon, the heat vanishes, leaving behind a growing chill that cuts through your thin linen tunic. You chew at hardened bread, dense, coarse, often mixed with grit from the grinding stones. Your teeth ache from it, but it fills your stomach. With the bread comes a clay cup of beer, not the golden drink of feasts, but a sour water brew, cloudy with sediment. It is less a pleasure than a necessity, a way to quiet hunger and ease thirst. The house is quiet, yet not silent. Outside, the desert stirs. The faint whistle of wind moves across the sands, rattling reeds at the edge of the fields. You hear the distant call of jackalsrill, piercing and unsettling. They circle beyond the edges of your world, scavengers searching the darkness. Sometimes you imagine them closer than they are. Inside the village, other sounds break the stillness. A baby's cough, the shuffle of neighbors settling down, a dog barking once, then going quiet. The night in Egypt is never a place of deep silence, but of small noises that remind you how thin the walls are, how exposed your life remains. Sleep comes only with difficulty. You lie on a mat of reeds, spread thin on the hardened earth. The mat scratches at your skin. Beneath, the floor is uneven, pressing against bones already sore from work. You turn from side to side, trying to ease the stiffness, listening to the breathing of others in the room. A family often shares one small space. The warmth of bodies can be comforting, but it can also mean a cough spreads quickly, or a restless sleeper wakes you again and again. Mosquitoes whine in your ear. You brush at them, half asleep, knowing you cannot escape their persistence. Sometimes they bite, leaving an itch that keeps you restless through the dark hours, and always the night air grows colder. You draw your garment closer, tucking your limbs in, but the fabric is thin, worn from use, and the chill settles anyway. Beyond discomfort, there is worry. A thief might slip into the village under cover of night. Rival groups, wanderers, or desert raiders occasionally prowl. There are no locks on doors, only simple wooden bars. And though most nights pass without incident, the possibility hangs like a shadow. Another reason your sleep is never deep. Even in rest, the body does not forget its labors. Your hands are rough, calloused. Your back throbs. Your legs cramp. You dream of carrying baskets, of climbing scaffolds, of stooping over rows of crops. You wake, half dreaming, with the work still clinging to you. The desert itself is part of the unease. In daylight, it is harsh but visible. At night, it is endless darkness. You do not see the sands stretching to the horizon, you only feel their closeness. You imagine their vast silence pressing in on the small, flickering lamps of your village. You know that without the walls of your home, without neighbors nearby, you would be swallowed by it. And yet, there is beauty. When you step outside, if you dare, the sky is alive. Stars burn bright above the black edge of the horizon, brighter than you can imagine today. They cluster in patterns, marking time, whispering stories passed down by priests and elders. You do not fully understand their meaning, but you feel their presence. The gods walk among them. The sun god sails through the underworld until dawn, fighting his eternal battle against the forces of chaos, so that you might see light again. For a moment, you breathe deeply. The night air is sharp, dry, carrying with it the scent of dust and smoke from cooking fires, now reduced to embers. It is not peace exactly, but it is a pause. A pause between one day of labor and the next. Eventually, sleep claims you not restful, not whole, but enough to survive. Enough to wake when the first faint glow touches the horizon, when roosters call, when another day of work begins. This is the rhythm of your life, as it was for countless others. Surviving desert nights was not about rest. It was about endurance. Now, let us leave behind the reed mats and shallow sleep of the common worker, and step into another world. The desert night was not endured only by farmers and laborers. It stretched over the palaces as well, touching the lives of kings. And there was one king in particular whose story still echoes across the sands, Akhenaten, the heretic Pharaoh. His birth name was Amenhotep, the fourth of that line. But names carry weight in Egypt, and his would not remain unchanged. You may imagine him as a young man, raised among the rituals and traditions of Thebes. A city thick with temples dedicated to Amen, the hidden god. Every day was filled with offerings, incense, and a priesthood grown powerful, perhaps too powerful. The young prince would have walked temple courts, heavy with the smell of resin and oil, the chants of priests droning like waves. And perhaps he found it stifling. Perhaps he longed for something different. When he took the throne, he began a quiet but radical transformation. He abandoned Amen and raised up Atan, the radiant sun disk, not a hidden god, but one that stretched visibly across the sky. Under this blazing symbol, Akhenaten remade Egypt. He changed not only worship, but also the very rhythms of life. He moved his court away from the centers of tradition, away from the crowded temples of Thebes, to a new city, Amarna, built on a desert plain. It was not a city grown from centuries of settlement. It rose suddenly, a vision carved into dust. Palaces, temples, and wide avenues appeared where there had been only rock and sand. Imagine the sound of chisels and hammers echoing late into the day, dust rising under the feet of thousands of workers. Those workers, like the ones you have already imagined in the first part of our journey, would have faced the same discomforts. Chill air, thin mats, restless nights. But what of the pharaoh himself? You may picture him walking his palace halls at night, oil lamps flickering against painted walls. The flame bends and smokes, leaving shadows that move across columns carved with his new god, the Aten. Outside, the desert stretches silent. The stars, bright in the clear black sky. Akhenaten, restless, perhaps, would have lifted his gaze. For a man who worshipped the sun, the night must have felt like a paradox, the absence of his chosen god. The long, cool hours when Aten had vanished. It is tempting to imagine the pharaoh pacing, thinking of the priests he had angered, of the nobles who whispered against him. His new religion demanded loyalty, but many clung to the old ways. At night, the doubts may have been sharper. The stillness of the desert has a way of amplifying thought. Even kings are not immune to unease. His queen, Nefertiti, is said to have been close to him. Perhaps they shared these nights, speaking in low voices, the murmur of their words mixing with the soft crackle of burning oil. Perhaps they looked upon their daughters asleep, wrapped in fine linen, and wondered whether the new world they were building would endure. For Amarna was not eternal. It was fragile, dependent on the will of one man. And when Akhenaten died, the city unraveled quickly. Temples to Aten fell silent. Priests of Amen returned to power. The royal tombs of Amarna lay half-finished, abandoned to sand and wind. His vision did not last, though his memory lingers. Even in failure, his life remains a study in contrast. A king who sought to bind his people to light, yet who lived surrounded by the vast uncertainties of darkness. In the quiet of his desert capital, when the fires dimmed, Akhenaten faced the same long nights as every laborer, farmer, or servant. And perhaps that is the most human image of him, not as a god, but as a man, sleepless under the desert sky. Now, let us lift our eyes away from palaces and sleeping mats and turn them upward. For the same desert nights that chilled the bones of laborers and whispered doubts into the mind of kings, also offered something else: a canopy of stars, clear, bright, and unbroken by modern light. The Egyptian night sky was a map, a calendar, and a storybook. You may imagine yourself lying on a flat roof of mud brick or stretched across cool stone at the edge of a temple court. The air is sharp but still. Above you, stars scatter in patterns familiar to ancient priests. Some of these constellations resemble our own. Others have been lost in translation, their shapes faded with time. Yet, to Egyptians, the heavens were alive. They told of gods sailing, of souls rising, of journeys through the afterlife. The priests of Egypt were not merely keepers of ritual. They were also observers of the sky. In tombs, archaeologists have uncovered painted ceilings that map out the stars, what we call star clocks. These were guides for measuring the hours of night. As stars rose and fell, priests could mark the passage of time, dividing darkness into segments, much as we divide the day into hours. A lamp guttering in a shrine, a watchful priest marking a star's position, the slow procession of constellations together. These gave rhythm to the night. One of the most mysterious of these constellations was what we might call the imperishable stars. These circled close to the North Star, never dipping below the horizon. To Egyptians, they were symbols of eternity, souls that would never vanish, spirits that shone without end. Pharaohs longed to join them. Pyramid texts speak of kings ascending to the sky, their souls taking their place among the imperishables, shining forever over Egypt. And then there was the night journey of Ra, the sun god. During the day, he sailed his solar bark across the heavens. But when night came, Egyptians believed Ra traveled through the underworld, fighting against darkness, serpents, and chaos, only to rise again at dawn. Each sunrise was more than a natural event. It was victory renewed. You can imagine priests whispering prayers through the dark hours, calling upon Ra to overcome his nightly trial, so that the morning light would return. The desert sky was not merely myth, however, it was also practical. Farmers depended on the stars to mark seasons. The appearance of Sirius, the bright star Egyptians called Sopdet, signaled the rising of the Nile. Its first appearance on the horizon was a moment of anticipation, for it foretold flooding, planting, and harvests to come. Thus, the sky above was as vital as the earth below. The heavens and the river together sustained life. There remain mysteries we cannot fully answer. Some scholars believe Egyptians may have had detailed star charts now lost. Others wonder how precisely they aligned monuments with celestial events. The Great Pyramid, for example, is astonishingly aligned with the cardinal directions. Was this achieved through careful observation of the stars? And the temples at Karnak and Abu Simbel seem designed to capture the light of solstices and equinoxes. What else might have been measured, recorded, and then forgotten to sand and time? It is soothing, in its way, to imagine this forgotten knowledge, to lie back, as an ancient Egyptian once did, and trace the movement of the heavens with unhurried eyes, to listen to the silence, broken only by the call of a night bird or the faint rustle of palm fronds, and to wonder how the ancients connected with the night sky and how much of their understanding is now beyond our reach. The night, then, was not only a time of hardship or restlessness. It was also a time of reflection, of mystery, of quiet reverence. A farmer might fear the howl of jackals. A king might pace beneath flickering lamps. But above them all, the stars endured, steady and eternal. The desert nights were harsh, yet they offered beauty, reminder of cycles, of order, of the cosmos watching silently over human struggles. Now, let us drift away from quiet rooftops and stargazing priests, and step inside the halls of Egypt's wealthy and powerful. For while common laborers lay on reed mats in chill air, nobles and royals experienced night differently. Theirs was a world softened by cushions, warmed by braziers, and illuminated by the steady glow of oil lamps. Imagine entering one of these grand spaces. The walls are painted with bright scenes of lotus blossoms and river birds, their colors glowing softly in lamplight. Columns rise like palm trunks, their capitals carved and painted in green and blue. Servants move quietly, trimming wicks, refilling lamps with oil pressed from sesame or castor seeds. The scent of burning oil mixes with perfumes of incense, frankincense, myrrh, and resin carried from distant lands. The desert night lingers just beyond the carved doorways, but here there's warmth, music, and abundance. At the center of these evenings were banquets. Guests, dressed in fine linen, pleated into delicate folds, reclined on chairs and low couches. Wigs, scented with cones of perfumed fat, slowly released fragrance as the night wore on. Tables were brought in, laden with roasted goose, seasoned beef, honey cakes, fresh bread, figs, and jars of imported wine. Harps, lutes, and pipes played softly as young dancers moved with slow, graceful steps. The pace was unhurried, almost timeless. And yet, beneath the surface of such luxury, banquets were not only for indulgence. They were theaters of politics. Alliances could be strengthened over shared wine. Disputes quietly settled with a toast. Marriages arranged with a quiet word between families. A noble's reputation might rise or fall, depending on the success of his hospitality. A single evening could alter the web of loyalties that held Egypt's elite together. Still, even here, the night imposed itself. The lamps, though plentiful, gave only flickering light. Shadows stretched across painted walls, and smoke gathered in the air. Outside, desert winds sighed against the stone, reminding all that no feast could fully escape the land in which it was held. The rich might wrap themselves in layered linens, might sip warmed drinks from bronze vessels, yet they, too, felt the bite of cold when fires dimmed. Servants drew curtains of woven reed or heavy cloth to keep out drafts, but the desert seeped in all the same. Sometimes, as the music faded, conversations turned reflective. A priest might speak of the gods' journeys, or a noble might recall ancestors long buried. The tomb, the stars, and the banquet hall, all intertwined in Egyptian thought. For to feast was not only to celebrate the moment, but also to honor the cycle of life and death, ensuring that prosperity in this world might echo into the next. Picture, then, one of these evenings winding to its close. The platters of food are nearly empty. The last songs draw to silence. Guests lean back, weary, yet content, as lamps burn low. Servants clear the remnants, while nobles speak in hushed voices or simply watch the play of shadows. Beyond the palace walls, the same stars shine down upon laborers and farmers, upon sleepers and wanderers alike. In this way, the contrast of Egyptian nights becomes complete. Hardship and hunger at the edge of the desert, and warmth and abundance at its center. Yet, both experiences, one of splendor, were framed by the same forces. The desert's chill, the whisper of wind, the eternal gaze of stars. The night was a common thread, binding the lives of all Egyptians, whether they slept on mats or feasted on delicacies. And so, our journey through the Egyptian night draws to its end. You have walked with the laborer, weary from a day's toil, searching for rest upon the hard earth beneath a canopy of stars. You have stood with Pharaoh Akhenaten in a lamplight of Amarna, restless in his visions, reshaping the faith of a kingdom, even as the desert pressed close around him. You have gazed upward with priests and stargazers, tracing constellations across the deep black sky, wondering at mysteries that remain unsolved even now. And you have reclined in the halls of nobles, where oil lamps glowed, musicians played, and abundance filled the air with warmth and fragrance. Across all these scenes, whether in hunger or in plenty, in silence or in song, the same desert night stretched its veil. The cool air, the watchful stars, the endless rhythm of wind and sand. These were constants that joined all Egyptians in the same cycle of darkness and dawn. Life was fragile and often difficult, yet it unfolded with a steady pulse, guided by rituals, traditions, and the unchanging sky. As you drift from these stories back into your own quiet space, you might carry with you the gentle perspective that time itself is a vast desert stretching across centuries. Generations have come and gone, leaving behind traces in stone, in song, and in memory, while the stars remain the same. The hardships of those who lived long ago are softened now, transformed into lessons, into echoes, into calm whispers of history. And tonight, unlike those desert laborers or wandering priests, you rest with the comfort of a soft bed, safe walls, and stillness that needs no guarding. The night will pass gently, and dawn will come, as it always has, quietly, faithfully, with the promise of light. Close your eyes now, and let the struggles of ancient Egypt fade into the distance. Allow the steady rhythm of time to carry you, as it carried them, toward rest, toward renewal, and toward the quiet certainty that tomorrow will arrive with the rising sun. Sleep well and dream peacefully beneath the eternal sky.